Welcome, Dr. Goulao, to this interview, and thank you very much for taking the time to be here. Could you please begin by introducing yourself?
Well, my name is Joao Goulao. I'm a family doctor. I'm the national coordinator for drugs in Portugal since '97, and I'm also the chair of the management board of the MCDDA, the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction.
Can you describe for me the situation in Portugal from the 1980s up until 2001, before decriminalization policy was introduced?
Well, in Portugal at this time we were facing a severe epidemic on heroin use due to historical reasons, but we always had drug consumption far below the average of the European Union, but the problematic drug use, mainly of heroin, was huge at that time. We had a true epidemic that was affecting about 1% of our population. So it was really a very severe situation, with AIDS coming along and with a huge burden on public health, on criminality, on public nuisance. It was really a top political problem in Portugal at that time. So to face it, we decided to prepare a strategy, because we were investing in creating more and more responses, but things didn't seem to respond. So the government at that time, in '98, decided to ask a group of experts to produce strategic recommendations. And I was included in that group, and we proposed a set of policies in terms of prevention, activity, treatment, harm reduction, reinsertion, all that in a humanistic, sitting in a humanistic view, and assuming that drug addiction is mainly a health condition and a social condition rather than a criminal one. So we proposed, along with that set of policies, the decriminalization of the use and possession for use of all drugs. And the strategy was accepted by the government, but this issue of the decriminalization had to be discussed at Parliament, and it was approved in 2000 and came into force in 2001. Since then, using drugs in Portugal is still prohibited, but it's no longer a crime. So you don't get a criminal record, you don't go to jail in any case. And this allowed us to make this issue something you can discuss everywhere. You can discuss in schools, in families. The taboo has fallen. The stigma linked to drug addiction has dropped. We now face the addiction, the problematic use of drugs as a disease, as others, chronic relapsing disease. So I believe that decriminalization is not the main aspect of our policy, even if it is the most known worldwide. But it made all those policies much more coherent, and we feel quite comfortable. Of course, we had a huge discussion at the time at the Parliament. Some ghosts, like Portugal would become a paradise for drug addicts from all over the world. We should have drug tourism, very important drug tourism. Our children will start using drugs since 5 years old or something like that. And now, looking back, 13 years later, we can be sure that nothing of these ghosts happened. The evolution of all the available indicators has been quite favorable. So we are quite comfortable with this. I believe it's not the time, because our society is facing other kind of problems now. This is not a top political problem. I believe we are not going to do any step further in the next few years, because there's really not a political discussion around this. There's a consensus about those policies, but we are very attentive to what is happening elsewhere. There are new experiences going on in a new paradigm. We went as far as possible within the prohibitionist paradigm, but nowadays we are facing new experiences in a new one, the regulatory paradigm. As our country has served as a living laboratory to deal with this experience, and we now have a concrete situation that we can say, okay, things had a favorable evolution. I hope that those new experiences that are taking place in some countries, namely Uruguay, for instance, in a few years can tell us they had also a good evolution. So those movements can inspire the international political movements in terms of drugs policy.
Portugal has been described as a transit country for drugs entering the European Union. Has decriminalisation had any impact on this?
Well, our decriminalisation law only deals with drug use and possession for personal use. Okay, so trafficking and all the movements are remain illegal and subject to criminal sanctions. What really happened in the practice is that the police and douane forces, when they got rid of the tasks connected to simple drug use and possession, they could allocate the means to the real important traffic. So then they increased a lot their efficiency. Instead of seizing grams or kilograms with the small fish, they could address the sharks. And it is very important, the collaboration that is established with international police and the intelligence force, namely within the MAOC, Maritime Analysis and Operations Center, which is an agency based in Lisbon, where Ireland is present also. Yesterday we had this big seizure here in Cork that was developed under the work of that agency. So I believe that this availability of means of the police addressed to important networks of traffic are really important, and I think it was an improvement, indirect improvement in the supply side work that came with decriminalisation.
Given the similarities between Portugal and Ireland in terms of entry for drugs into the European Union and being a transit country, what effect do you think would result in Ireland if it were to introduce decriminalisation similar to Portugal? And what impact would this have on drug smuggling?
Well, probably to happen the same that happened in Portugal, the possibility of the police forces to address more definitively that kind of traffic rather than the small smuggling. But, well, in any way, I would say different countries have different realities. I think the experiences taking place in other countries of the world can be inspiring, but people have to adapt them to their own reality, to their own constitution, to their, well, there's a lot of items that we have to consider when you draw your policy in terms of drugs. Anyway, I'm very happy that the Portuguese experience is inspiring at least the reflection around those themes.
What should we expect from countries of the European Union in the upcoming UN General Assembly and Special Session of Drugs in New York in 2016?
Well, I would say that I don't expect any revolutionary movement from the European Union. I believe that the same way that happened in Portugal, and I believe also in Ireland, we are quite comfortable with some recent steps coming from considering the drug issues mainly as a justice or law enforcement problem, and making it change into the health and social welfare scope. Having said so, there are some differences about, for instance, the harm reduction policies. I believe that the European Union would support the statement of the utility of that kind of policies, but assuming any change on the United Nations conventions, at the moment I don't believe it would be very strong movement. I hope and I expect that movement will come mainly from the South American countries now that are changing. They are facing other kind of problems. They are mainly affected by side effects of the production and distribution of drugs rather than the abuse of them. So their main goal is to abolish the kind of impact that comes from that side, the production and the distribution. So this new paradigm aims, in my view, mainly to deal with that kind of problems. So that's why I expect more movements from Latin America than from Europe.
Okay, Dr. Goulao, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for taking this interview.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.